Diaries of Dead Thought, Chapter 6. Smooth Sailing. In the last chapter we left the user and evil attending to their guests as good, reclaiming 2/3 of her prize, exiting the elevator from the second floor guest suite. With a ding again, the elevator opens to the again beautiful second floor guest suite. There we see two guests that had left to their own devices, had come to mingle on their own. Shocked to see someone else come into the room, they look up at Good. She humbly nods and says, "Don't worry, guys," as they ask what time it is. She ushers, "I do not know," as they run behind her into the elevator. With a ding, it closes behind her. She shrugs her head, again noting the clock on the table, 7:30. As she walks over to the balcony, turning her eyes upward as she continues her ascend upward. But first, hiding the case, there on the balcony, right in plain sight, on the table, the coffee table outside, next to a pack of cigarettes and an ashtray, lays the case. As we turn and see her nimbly jump up the mountain from pillar to pillar, grappling, grabbing back and forth onto the pillars, she appears more like a tick as we see her jump back and forth, nimbly jumping back and forth, making her way the 100 feet upward ascent to the master suite above. There, we hear again the ding of the elevator as our two last guests meet up with the last of the remaining guests in the main room. As we see Good also rejoining the party, stepping up off the deck, adorning her red gown. Now, after coming in contact with the case, if only for that split second, her tattered gowns before that she had worn through many battles, now was again clean and pressed after coming in contact with the case, granting her the ability of the case, which is cleanliness is next to godliness among men. Simply put, that if you have the object, nothing on this earth can touch you or stain you, and everything you hold will be held up above everyone else around you. Anyway, admiring her newly freshened up outfit that she did appreciate before, but now had been torn to ribbons after the previous battles, huge slashes down her back, everything being brought back to a new state. Even the gun she carries seems to be unfired now, not smelling of gunpowder. Only 2 clips remaining now. She's discarded the rest, taking inventory of what she has now. Only 1 grenade and her watch she holds now. And the one Uzi. Everything else has been laid out into place. And now she rejoins the party. We turn now to the user, who has for the first time has changed his outfit of clothes for nearly 3 decades. Out of some reason, OCD nature, he owns many, many suits and has them ready, clean, and pressed, but still, this being fully aware as he feels the sweat gathering around his collar, soaking into his shirt, becoming haggard and smelling of himself. This very idea, something that he has not experienced, being frozen in time and age for this whole time. He himself, a younger man in his early 30s, when he first came across these objects, now, by all rights, he should be in his prime of his later lives, even passed on by now, 60 or 70. And now he wears that time in his eyes, that it's catching up to him. But his body has not. His mind is catching up with his body. The sensation of the sweat on his back and the hairs rising up on his palm feel new and awkward to him. He thinks back now in regret to grabbing the objects. He should have listened to the advice of his friends around him at the time, but that's how it goes sometimes with advice. Sometimes the best advice just leads you in a bad direction, but that's really was the direction you were supposed to go, but go figure. Turning away from him, we hear the house music coming to an end. The lights coming to a full. All nooks and crannies being illuminated. It's time for the party to move, people, the user announced, with Evil at his side. Good standing in the doorway as he ushers his guests through the front patio and around the deck, past the atrium and the vegetable garden, to gather and make their way down the corridor, to wait for his arrival and for the band to start rocking. Just wait, guys. As soon as the door opens, you'll know what to do. Just wait down there, he says, as he stands firm, standing next to the coffee table, his familiar position that we originally saw him in, now taking a more aggressive stance. Not an immortal man, but still he has prepared for this moment. And he knows that he needs to fight and stand up for what he's doing, or it's all going to come to an end, and he might as well give up. So he's not going to let his work go to vain as he stands proudly by his kitchen, waiting for his guests to clear the house. As good and evil, again, familiarly take their stance and begin their circling mirroring each other's step in balance, opposite each other, circling the gap round and around. Starting now at the outer edge of the home, it begins at more at a full pace now, running, not towards each other, but more away from each other, circling the walls opposite each other. They begin to run. Ignoring everything in the room, their eyes lock on each other. Running in mirror around the room and circle, everything becomes a blur, except for them. Walking around in a circle now, it becomes a jogging, fast pace, which now slowly begins to incorporate the wall and the glass. As they continue their marching run, spiraling, I sit in amazement in the center of the room, spinning to keep up. They are now on opposite ends of the house, yet, as if caught in some vortex, they run, just skipping around the perimeter of the house, making the whole circle and now in less than 20 to 30 steps, as if they do not even need to touch the surface of the outside of the home to make this perimeter of the circle, emphasizing the shape of the home. As they continue this parade around and around and around, the user sits nervously, crunching his cup, taking a sip of his coffee nervously. He looks down at his sidearm, at which he has now equipped himself with. Checking it, giving it a cock back and checking the safety. He sets it on the table. Looking back up now. This parade running around his head. He quickly decides this probably is not the best place to be and runs outside onto the deck. As we turn back to good and evil. Now, the sheer momentum of them has brought them to the precipice of the top of the home, where a circular planes of glass to make up the living room came up to an octagon at the top. Now they meet, as if they walked straight up the wall, as if they were walking on the wall, and when they met the ceiling, that's when they met a wall. Mirroring each other's steps, good on the outside of the home, facing away, and good on the inside of the home, pushing away against the house. Now they are both at the top of the home, directly beneath the glass sanctuary up above. They release themselves off, kicking forward, pushing their momentum towards the center, now towards me. And in a slashing spark, they slash each other back and forth. As a slash of blood, it's not apparent who's been struck a blow. As they pass each other, landing on opposite ends of the home, they continue their march in the same momentum turn, now in a downward fashion. Now in more of a blur, I see the swords. As night is showing, illuminating through the house, the glass pillar. The guests now can look back and clearly see this display happening inside of the house. As a flash of light, circular eruption of light and sparks, clash of sound, and the sheer feeling of the vibration underneath their feet as they can see and hear what's going on inside the house from many, many, many yards away. We turn back to good and evil, now taking their second thrust at each other, coming down now from the top of the house. At their second attempt, they stab back at each other. Evil taking a bit of a quicker turn, not coming all the way to the precipice to match good, but jumping off a quarter turn before to take her off guard. She does not shoot for the center of the room. She shoots for 1/4 further at her, catching her off guard in a stabbing motion. Stabbing her, they meet in the center of the room. With a slash, still, Good's evil sword slashing together. Good sword not able to avoid this impact, the sword penetrating through her chest. The red glow of Evil's sword becoming apparent from the underside. As in a slow motion pan, we see Evil balanced, standing up on top of Good's chest with the sword pushed through her chest, now making herself appear to be more heavy, as if a 10,000-pound weight, a bus, had just appeared on Good. She smashes down to the floor in an instant. Not like before, not with some little shock wave. Her sword penetrating through the floorboard, pinning Good to the floor. The sheer force of impact of her fist against Good's chest is the only thing stopping Good from hitting the floor. As that impact hits the floor, as blood gushes through the new split in the foundation that Evil has created, with a thud and a smash of the foundation of the home. This is felt from the guests 30 feet off as the house is rocked on its foundation. As Evil stops and pins Good down. Good is more than taken back by this. It appears that she has maybe even lost her breath. Like a human, she gasps, not able to breathe. Her right arm now pinned down simply by Evil's foot, trying to release her sword. She stands now gasping as the user walks over with his gun. A small handgun. Something quite irrelevant and quite not really like you brought a knife to a gun bat, you know. As he walks up and unloads the gun in Good's face. Quite irrelevantly not doing any permanent damage, as if this would, if she's not a zombie, this isn't even her true form. She just needs to keep it together, otherwise she's really doesn't have a form to be here anymore. Really, the only consequence for her to exist or not to exist, or finish what she's been here for. She sits now pinned to the floor as the user, seeming to release his stress, unloads his entire clip on Good. This now taking some time to repair itself. It seems the faster an injury happens, the slower it takes to return. So giving him a good 10 seconds. He fumbles over Good's possessions, finding nothing. He turns back to Evil and says she doesn't even have anything. Well, of course she doesn't. She's not going to just hold on to it. She doesn't have to. She's not trying to hold on to it to be more powerful. That's why I thought you were smarter than everyone else, that you figured that out on your own. I'm not going to tell you to do that. Bro, you lose one more of these, and I'm going to be the one to take off your head. You got me? So you better be careful, because that last object you hold is your thread to this plane. So you better watch it. As he turns and looks at Good and Evil. Good looking at him. now with a face. Good looking. Evil looking at him as well. He seems now for a second shocked, like he's outnumbered, you know? Like, well, shit, I thought you were on my side, Evil. And this nod not returned by Evil. He stops and ushers for Evil to hand him her sword. Shocked by this, but unable to not comply, she immediately hands the sword over. He steps back, and with a huge swing of his sword, he attempts to remove Good's head. Now, just at a sheer simple swing, Evil being required to move her foot. Good, spinning around now out of place with the sword in hand. The user now standing with the sword, looking dumbfounded. Evil looks at the user. Can I have that back? And before it's too late, as you see Evil's hand extended out in a gesture of please, can I have that back? You see it removed and dropped to the ground. And again being ushered off the deck. But only the upper portion. With a smirk, she turns back to the user as the lower portion of Evil's body swiggles and squirms on the floor like a fish, like a leg trying to jump up and orientate itself, unable to know up from down, as we see Evil falling down to the beach and hitting the shore, splashing into the water, being stuck by the riptide against the island. We turn back now to the user and Good. He stands now for a second, chalk-jawed, with his jaw open halfway to the floor. He now stands back and does his best to gain his composure as he mirrors Good's steps, walking in silhouette around the room, now looking at each other. The user holding Evil's sword, Good, ready to finish this, and Evil sitting on the deck, waiting to be reunited with her upper portion. She gives him a nod and asks, "Are you ready?" They continue their march around the room. The user actually kind of offsetted by Good's little nod there, you know? Like, is this just a game to you, he says? Kinda. It's been kind of a joke since the get-go, actually. Just kind of got sent to clean up some shit, is what I'm here to do. So whenever you're ready, as they continue their march around, the user, sweaty palm grip on the Evil sword shaft, now thinking back to what little training he got from Evil together, thinking back to the steps to how to defend yourself, long-term survival. Thinking back to step number 1 is long-term survival. Can I defeat this battle? Scenario, 50% chance he's going through this in his head. Odds say no. Right now, my trump card, Evil. Evil cannot protect me. She cannot get herself back up. He continues his march around. Now, on opposite ends of the home, Good standing back towards the kitchen, and the user standing halfway to the front doors, now realizing that he needs to beeline for evil, returning the better portions back to each other. He stops for a second, seeing that Good jumps onto the counter, now adorning, obviously, the red dress. She stops and looks down at the dress, returning her sword back, as the user, again, continuing his march, walking towards, closing the gap towards evil now. Good says, "So, I mean, is it too late already? Are all those people dead?" Not quite yet. Got a little bit of time, I think. So I think at least a 2-minute walk to get over there. So, with 10 steps to go, to close the gap to evil, the user releases his sword calmly. Not in an aggressive fashion towards Good, but just as to ready it. We turn back to Good. Now, standing on the counter again, drawing the attention back to her wardrobe again. "So how do you like this dress? It really got torn up earlier, but I was able to really bring it together faster. I cleaned it. Did you notice that? It was pretty torn back. Maybe you should have, worked at a laundromat. You know? That's all you could have done your whole life. You would have been the happiest damn laundromat owner ever. You wouldn't even have had to spend any money to wash clothes. Because look at this dress. Isn't it perfect? Here, in fact, check it out. Here, in fact, check out over there. See on the table?" As the user looks and sees that she has removed all of the air filters in the home. In a pile of dust and crumpled up filters, 6 or 7 filters lay on the table. Now just accentuating the fact of how much of a germaphobe the user is. A normal home would only have 1 filter for the air intake for your home, for the main air intake, right? But this guy has 6 or 7 for a small area, mind you. This whole house is only one big room with a bedroom. Just circulating air through an ion no blade system. One of the more advanced air moving systems at its time. Like you would see the Dyson air fan, where it's just a circle with no fans. But now without the filters, you see a bead of sweat run down the user's face as he realizes that he is breathing really yucky, dirty air. And we turn back to Good, now on the counter. You should check this out. I'm getting really good at this too now. She takes her sword, pulls it back, and turns into the ghostly form of the ribbon as she cuts out a scene, out of place and out of view. Now, with a 2-second delay and a chance to ready himself, he pulls out his sword. Readying his sword, he kicks evil off of the deck so that she can rejoin herself. He turns back now and in a full run, runs back into the house as we see that Good has been, by being sucked into the one fan previously she had been sucked into earlier, now brought her into a system which released her into the center of the living room, up high, in the center of the room. The user, knowing quite well of this, he runs back into the room full split, with his sword raised above his head. He runs into the living room, jumping onto the couch, looking straight up, knowing where his next attacker was coming from. Looking up, we see Good, sure enough, appearing out of the heater vent. The circulation of the system being so big that it takes a good 30 seconds for air to move. We see her with her sword expanded, becoming this ghostly image of a sword smashing down with 1,000-pound smashing weight on the user's head. He manages to thwart this attack with his sword out already. Again, emphasizing the fact that when the sword is extended and pointed out, you could drop a bus on the fucking thing and you would not be able to move it. It is not going to move from place from where it's at. You could pull out the sword and get hit by a car, and it is going to stop whatever is in front of it. Emphasizing the power of the swords again now, as he smashes and sorts the battle. Now he turns, ready, with a full swinging slash at Good. Blindly slashing his sword and taking a step with each slash, he slashes and madly does his best to attack Good. Good, actually caught quite off guard by this, does her best to defend these blows, knowing quite well that this is a life or death move by this. I mean, even the slightest graze by his sword is going to do him in. This is quite bolzen for the guy, honestly, as he does his best to finish this himself. And with a jump and a thrust, she thrushes herself back towards the kitchen, landing gracefully on the counter again. Turning back to the grenade on her feet, emphasizing how graceful Good really is, she jumped onto the counter, landing on the pin with her right foot. Her foot landing on the grenade's pin, releasing the pin. With the grenade tumbling around on the counter, she slides back now a good foot on the counter until her balance is regained, stopping now and kicking the grenade back at the user. A 5-second delay on the grenade gave the user half of a chance as he dives towards Good. The grenade exploding with a huge fiery eruption of fire and broken glass and splintered wood. This explosion is felt outside by all the guests. Even my ears ring from this. And we turn back to the user coughing in front of his beloved coffee chair. We look at Good now. The user, if only fueled by some determination not to just physically die, instead of curling up in a ball and deciding to die at the sight of this grenade going off, he jumps and curls away from the explosion towards Good, next to the counter, underneath where she stood, as he pulls out the sword himself, relieving Good of her feet from her ankles. We see now him grabbing one foot and running away the other way, as Good stumbles, falling to the ground off of the counter now, spilling blood on her red clothes, her red dress. Again, picking herself up, she puts her one foot back on, looking at her dress, now stained with her own blood, cursing underneath her breath. "Oh, I'm going to make you pay for that." She turns back to see that Evil has now rejoined the party, jumping back onto the deck. She turns to the user. "Holy fuck, you're still alive? I heard that shit. Way to go, bro." "I know, right?" the user says. Look it, she only has 1 foot. It's right here. Take it. Oh, take it. It's gross. He throws the foot to Evil, and she says, "Oh, yuck," with like a hopping hot potato action. She throws the foot off of the deck. Good, now looking at both of them, like, what the She stops and turns to her gown and her guns on the counter. Quickly assembling her outfit again, she turns towards the user with a steak knife in hand, throwing it at him. She jumps up to the second floor of the balcony, looking back down now at the user and Evil. Evil, now rejoining her in the middle of the living room. We look back at the house now and really take quite a look at the damage that's taken place here. I mean, it started off very gradual with Evil scratching the pane of the glass, now visible in a pane of glass. Even those original stains of blood disappearing, but we're turning now back to the bathroom demolished. Not stained from blood, obviously, mind you, because Good's and Evil's blood are self-cleaning. But anyway, we look at the demolition of the house. The leather couches now receiving serious explosions. One portion of the couch being flipped now. Full quarter now, it blocking a straight shot into the elevator. Now you take 2 or 3 steps out of the elevator, and you'd have to walk to your right to go forward, it blocking. Just looking at all the demolition on the floor everywhere, she takes note of the situation. Now nodding at Evil, as if ushering. "Are you ready?" Now, panning away from Good up on the balcony, user and Evil rejoining, we pan out onto the deck and around the garden to see the guests, all cuddled at the end of the hallway now. At the end of the corridor, they've all reached the door. A timer has reached its end, and a door opens. And inside a dimly lit room with a strobe light and a few colored lights flash, and loud music ushers the guests in. As we continue to pan into the dark room, seeing now the canisters. These canisters marked biohazard, just like the door. They seem to be on some timer, which now turn on, releasing its content into the room, exposing all the guests. We turn now our attention to the hum the power that's emanating from all the objects, just as if a note to keep track of their content, as if where they are now. We see the ring on the user's hand, and down below on the deck we see the case and a chain with an old man panic button with a strangely embedded coin with a hole in it. A coin embedded with a strange triangle and Illuminati symbol. Kind of a strange universal symbol. Some sort of writing with actual American writing on it, which is quite odd. We see now. In God we trust. Kind of a strange comment for something that's supposed to be older than all of us, but again, we take note and we pan back at what has happened and what's about to.